Good morning. Want to make sure our audio is okay. All right. Good morning and welcome to our panel on college transition and persistence. We're very fortunate here to have two individuals who serve in key leadership positions here in the Chicago area, and so it is my pleasure to introduce you to those individuals. So as you introduce yourselves, if you would, please give a little bit of a background. Typically with Future Insight, our podcast, we give a little bit of background on your journey that brought you to this position that you currently hold. So without further ado, I will pass this on to Dr. Buccola.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for being here. And I just want to say that I am very sorry that some of you may have experienced the difficulties making it to the United States in your travel journey that, we are all facing now, given some of the political winds that are currently blowing. So welcome to all of you who are here. We're delighted that you're able to join us here in Chicago. So if you look out that window there, you can see Roosevelt University out the window here. And we we're situated right in the city, and we partner a great deal with the city colleges of Chicago to bring students from the community colleges who want to complete a BA degree after they have done their associate's degree. We have very robust transfer partnerships throughout the city. So I refer to myself as an accidental academic who became an accidental administrator. So I originally went to college to be a writer. That was my goal in life. And I was a journalism and English double major as an undergraduate student. And then I did a variety of internships and got my first job after college. And while I was working in that position at a Fortune 500 company and corporate communications, basically, I sort of noticed, everyone around me seems to have a master's degree. Maybe I should go get one of those. So at a good transition point, I went to do an MA, and I got a teaching assistantship to support that work. And that was when the hook went in about being a professor. I was like, I really love doing this. I could do this for a job. And then spent some time as a professor and actually had some leadership say to me you wouldn't want to do administration, would you? You're very interested in research and in writing. And I sort of went, yeah, that seems true, right. Yeah, I don't want to do that. And then, as things happen, we had a big gaping hole in our need for a chair, and we're going through a restructuring. And I was asked to be chair of a restructured unit of Humanities, and found that I actually really did enjoy that work and had an aptitude for it. And then when it became possible through another restructuring to pursue a dean opportunity in our College of Humanities, Education and Social Sciences, I transitioned into that role as well. That's just been 2 years ago. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am now. And I was just really fortunate to end up at Roosevelt. I did my PhD here in Chicago at University of Illinois at Chicago, and the position came open at Roosevelt when I was finishing my dissertation and was able to apply for it. And in fact, I felt sort of guilty because it was in my field, my teaching field, and I had colleagues in grad school at the time who really needed to stay in Chicago, and I didn't at the time. I wasn't bound here in a particular way other than by love of the city. So I feel really lucky that I got to stay here and be in this great city.
Thank you. And good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Potter. I'm the Provost and Chief Academic Officer for City Colleges of Chicago. And just to give you a little bit of sense of the institution, we are a district of 7 independently accredited colleges throughout the city of Chicago. All of the colleges are 2-year community colleges, and students come to city colleges for any number of reasons. They might come in order to move directly into the workforce. They might come in order to transfer to baccalaureate institutions such as Roosevelt University. We have adult education students who are attending city colleges in order to complete their high school equivalency or to improve their English language skills in an ESL, English as a Second Language, curriculum that we have. Those programs are free and funded by the state and federal government. And then we have also non-credit programs that are designed either for enrichment or to develop skills that are valuable in the labor market. What our students all have in common is a desire to improve their lives. That's not uncommon in higher education, but given the scale and size of city colleges, we serve over 70,000 students now every year. We consider ourselves to be one of the most important engines of economic opportunity and economic mobility in the city of Chicago. So to say a little bit about my own journey into the role that I have, by the way, is one where I am chiefly responsible for the academic direction and academic quality across all of the colleges, across the district. I serve as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer for the district, and we do operate as a district in unison. Even though our colleges are independently accredited, we have a single strategic plan, we have a single board, we have common labor agreements at all of the colleges. We have common enterprise systems and a common course catalog across the colleges. And so we do set out with a vision and strategic framework for the district that the colleges then execute on in order to promote student success and the outcomes that we set as a goal for City Colleges of Chicago. So in that role, I am busy working with the leaders of all 7 colleges just to make sure that we're moving in step toward the vision and the goals of City Colleges of Chicago. I came to this also as an accidental administrator. I think that's probably a pretty common route. I'm trained as a historian. I think we may both be early modernists, actually.
Yes.
Early modern European history is my field of study, and I was a full-time tenured faculty member at the early part of my career in a location that I was not super crazy about spending my life in. That's kind of the tale of academics oftentimes, especially when you're in a field like early modern Europe, where there isn't a lot of mobility and opportunity to move around. So I used my experience as a department chair to build my administrative skills and competencies, and I've actually earned and given up tenure twice, moving into at-will administrative roles, including my move from my most recent position in Denver, Colorado, to here 8 years ago to take the position that I have. And at no point did I look back thinking anything in terms of regret about giving up tenure, giving up a lifestyle, so to speak. It's been a very good journey that I have leaned into strongly. But I've worked in faculty development, and I have worked in academic affairs, broadly speaking. The role that I had before I came to City Colleges of Chicago was an associate vice president for undergraduate studies at a large public comprehensive university in Denver, and there I was managing transitions, helping students in their transition into the university through their first year, into their majors, and ensuring that they were meeting their goals while being engaged as undergraduate students through the course of their bachelor degrees. And I was able to take that experience and then translate it into my role here at City Colleges of Chicago.
Thank you both. I think it's important for individuals to know what your professional journey has been, because I think it serves to guide and shape the decisions that you make and how you approach building a leadership team as an administrator. Again, my background is history education as well. So if you would, I think it's important, because the context we find ourselves in today, so much is defined by our experience during the COVID-19 pandemic and the legacy that it has for us and the takeaways, the lessons that we learn. We're going to delve into a little bit more on college transition and student retention, but and you can certainly address that if you would. But how did your institutions navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic, and how has that shaped the current landscape that you have today at your respective institutions?
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned restructuring, right? So one of the ways in which it impacted us, so imagine, if you will, the timeline that Roosevelt had acquired a neighbor institution, Robert Morris University in Chicago, over the course of the 2019-2020 academic year, and it had been a very carefully phased process of meeting one another, collaborating, bringing folks into our community. So, things such as they were on the quarter system and we are on semesters, so figuring out how we would bring, rotate their students into our course schedule, all that kind of thing. We had all of those things worked out, and here's the timeline piece that will land, I think, for everyone sitting here. We were all due to start being on campus together in March of 2020. Right, it's hilarious. It's like the punchline to a bad joke, right? So what we found, of course, was that it was very difficult to create or maintain, the sort of momentum with the community that we were attempting to build when we had to shut everything down and go to an entirely Zoom and online asynchronous mode of delivery for everything. And so to kind of fast forward a bit to right now, I have been saying for quite some time that I think that we are continuing to experience the sort of drag of that in a variety of ways. And one of them is that we just didn't have the opportunity to maintain momentum around what I typically characterize as Roosevelt's superpower, and that is our community and the experience of being together on campus. So just as some examples, we have every fall a conference on campus called the American Dream Reconsidered. So we have panel presentations throughout the day that faculty are encouraged to build into their courses and have their students attend. And then each evening of the conference ends with a keynote address. So in the past, we've brought people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor from the U.S. Supreme Court. So those are huge, very well-attended events by people in the community, at large, as well as from Roosevelt itself. Well, attendance and things like that even has begun to be very challenging, just because the habit of mind of, structuring your life in that way has kind of fallen by the wayside. And it's problematic for lots of reasons. So it makes retention a challenge because, of course, I think we all know that it's a lot of those pieces that are outside of the context of the classroom, whether it's connecting with faculty in really robust conversations and office hours in person, or attending events with peers and meeting new people that are maybe not in your major but interested in some of the same kinds of things that you are. It's all of that kind of stuff that creates some of the cohesion of the college experience. And when we're having challenges getting people to show up for things like that, it's really difficult in some cases to retain people that you might otherwise be able to catch a hold of, And then it's also, I think, having an adverse impact on faculty morale. So as an administrator, I really see that too. So morale has been very challenged, coming back. So, I feel like we're caught in this kind of feedback loop where the students aren't as engaged as they once were, and the faculty are frustrated by that. And so they are sort of maybe not always behaving in the best ways. Some of us were just talking recently about some out-of-office replies that people have set for the summer that are truly wacky overshares. Like, I'm off contract until August, and I'm like, what? that is the most inhospitable, like, can you not say, please contact Dean Buccola or contact their department chair? Why is this off-putting message of don't bother me, coming out there? And then, of course, the other thing that I see in a vector with the COVID pandemic and its aftermath is the rise of AI technology and all of the frustrations that faculty have around that. And, we have tried some faculty development about strategic ways to use this as a tool. And we've reminded people that, there was a time when all the people who do like polls in class with their students' cell phones used to want to ban them from the classroom. We've pointed out that we've navigated this space before of technologies that people perceive as disruptive, but that they then learn to incorporate into their pedagogy in an effective way that's future-looking and helps to transition students to the professional space where they will also use these tools. We've tried to remind them that we've navigated this before and we can do it again, but frustration remains high with that too. So I think that we're seeing still a continued ripple effect of this. And it's really only, I would say, in the last year or so that faculty are starting to say that they're starting to see students settle down, like just in terms of mental health and anxiety. And I understand, the COVID pandemic was challenging for those of us who are older and who have developed resilience and coping skills. It was a historic, once-a-century event. And so for our young people to have experienced that kind of fear and disruption, of course, it's going to have a lasting sort of PTSD kind of effect on them. And I feel like we're still seeing that and coming out of that.
Thank you. The experience at City Colleges of Chicago was quite similar. Thinking back to March of 2020, we, as all institutions of education had to do, pivoted very quickly. From roughly 90% of our coursework being in person and 10% online, to nearly all of the instruction switching to online. We created a new modality, so to speak, the online synchronous or the Zoom class, which we have maintained actually beyond the pandemic, because we saw some value in that new modality alongside the online asynchronous traditional online modality of instruction. Throughout the pandemic then, when, I'm thinking back to when we all thought we'd be back within 2-3 weeks, and that certainly wasn't the case. We needed to make some decisions then about how to invest the federal relief funds that city colleges received. And, we did so by ensuring that we were investing into mental health supports, into technology supports for our students, loaner laptops, and hotspots, and the like. We invested into instructional design of additional asynchronous online courses, and so we really were very thoughtful about how we used the federal relief funds to ensure that we were continuing to deliver the best possible educational experience for our students, and provide them at the same time with the student supports that are necessary for their thriving in the educational context. So coming out of the pandemic, then our experience is very similar to what has been described at Roosevelt University. As I mentioned, we maintained the online synchronous modality. We have had some I don't want to say challenges, but it has taken some work to re-energize our campuses, and that means first and foremost getting faculty back to teaching in person, and getting students comfortable to coming back in person at our colleges. we're definitely continuing to make progress in that direction, but it's been a process to get there. Our students are telling us that they want to be in person, to be part of a campus life, but oftentimes when we are then scheduling in-person classes, they're not attending, they're not selecting those. So they're clearly balancing convenience and everything else that's going on in their lives, their jobs, their work, their families. Many of our students are parents and caretakers, with a desire to have a college experience. And we are then navigating on our end our ability to deliver that promise to them that they can do both, because that's the reality of our students. They are doing it all as oftentimes full-time, fully employed full-time caretakers, a lot going on in their lives while they are pursuing their studies at City Colleges of Chicago. And in fact, some recent data that we pulled shows that students who have a hybrid schedule, not to be confused with enrolling in hybrid courses, but who have a schedule comprised of online classes and in-person face-to-face classes, do better and have higher retention rates than either students with a fully in-person schedule or students with a fully online schedule. And so I think that speaks to where we are meeting students now, and where we will continue to meet students, at least in the near future, as it continues to be the case that type of a hybrid flex to their lives and to how we support students will be the path going forward.
Thanks. If I may just add on to that, to offer an example of a way in which, so we did a lot of similar things in terms of loaner laptop programs and so forth that we now still have at Roosevelt that we originally set up during the pandemic, or in some cases made more robust during the pandemic. So a couple of other things that we did, we opened a food and hygiene pantry on campus post-pandemic, because, I mean, as I think we all know, economic challenges are another thing that has lingered after the pandemic for many people who were underemployed or unemployed, during it, and, lost resources throughout that time. And then we also have had for a long time a career closet on campus where students can go and shop, for free for, kinds of clothes that maybe they don't own or wear, during their college journey, or even like briefcases or, things like that they might want as they move into a professional space. And so in an effort to kind of highlight these sorts of resources for students and create community, in April, we had a career closet fashion show where they set up literally like a red carpet runway and had paparazzi and this kind of stuff, and had people from throughout campus, so some students and administrators and so forth, walk the runway, modeling fashions that were available in the career closet. And that was a huge hit. That was very well attended. And so it was a way to kind of combine showing students what resources are available to them while also bringing them together in community.
Great. You both bring up a number of different strategies that your institutions have employed. I want to kind of unpack a little bit more on those, and let's actually start with the last one that you talked about in terms of trying to meet those financial needs of students, whether it's some of the initiatives that you've talked about, scholarships, additional scholarship or external funding, emergency funds for students, those types of initiatives to help students to overcome financial hurdles that they encounter. And also, if you could kind of place that within the context of the current fiscal landscape, which we know obviously presents additionally new hurdles or obstacles in that regard.
Absolutely. So one of the things, I mean, I've been at Roosevelt long enough, I started there in 2000, to see a number of administrators come and go. We had a president a number of years ago who very much disliked that we were cheaper than other area institutions in terms of our tuition price, because he felt that this could potentially create a you get what you pay for sort of mentality, where, people comparing us to other area institutions like, DePaul, Loyola, just to name a couple, might think that we weren't as good as them because we didn't cost as much as they did. And so they raised the sticker price, but as I was talking about with some people at breakfast this morning, Roosevelt is 98% Pell eligible in terms of its student body. So all of our students, almost all of them, are coming in with significant financial support from the federal government, at least at present. And then also from within the state, we have a lot of students that come to us from within Illinois, so they are eligible for MAP grants that the state offers to prevent brain drain, essentially, and keep students at schools here and entering our professional spaces. And then we also have a number of grants that donors fund, that fund additional scholarships. And those were expanded during the pandemic, to help students out. And so those funds still exist for people to contribute to, and they do, our alumni and donors. So tuition is deeply discounted in reality for most of our students. Our current president has seen the winds of change and, attitudes about taking on debt and so forth. And so we went to a model a couple of years ago where we just started saying that our tuition is what most people actually pay and marked it down seemingly, by like 45 or 50%, because that's the reality of what most people actually pay to attend the institution. And then we also this year, for the 2025-26 academic year, have followed the lead of other area institutions like the University of Illinois at Chicago, where I did my PhD, and have made a pledge that anyone who is a resident in Illinois whose family earns $50,000 or less, who will be supporting them, to go to college, can come for free. So we have joined other area institutions in making commitments such as that, to sort of support the notion that college education is vitally important as a milestone on the way to professional success and attainment, but recognizing that not everyone has the leg up that they might need to start that process.
Our primary strategy at City Colleges of Chicago to ensure that our students have the financial wherewithal to persist, and I'm going to touch on roughly the same themes that you touched on at Roosevelt, but our primary strategy is to ensure that our tuition rates are affordable. Since the time that the current chancellor and began as a leader of City Colleges, and I began as provost about a month after him, we held tuition flat at City Colleges for a total of 8 years. And only in 2024 did we increase our tuition, and then there was a subsequent incremental increase to our tuition too. But to this day, our tuition rate at City Colleges is still only $153 per credit hour. And most of our students are enrolling in somewhere between 9 and 12 credit hours, and so you can do the math and understand that this can be affordable to most residents of Chicago. And then when you are adding federal financial aid to that formula, for students who are partially or full Pell eligible, and who are receiving MAP in many cases, are going to be able to hold on to a fairly good a refund from their financial aid award that's going to allow them to cover their books, their incidentals, their housing costs or a portion of their housing costs in many instances. And so it's very important to us that we remain affordable while we're also able to invest in the initiatives that we need to invest in. We've been fortunate at the same time that over the last many years, the amounts of Pell awards have been increased by the federal government, and we know that is something that may not continue to be the case, but that has benefited our students certainly over the last decade or so. And then we are investing in many of the same types of services and supports that you've already heard of, food, some housing, although most of our students are commuter students and we don't provide residences in the way that Roosevelt University and other universities in the city do. We are engaged in initiatives to help the students in most need to be able to secure housing, and we have had emergency funds as well for our students, and so we're doing what we can with the resources that are available to us, certainly. And then I would say the other strategy that we have is to make sure that students come in and then succeed and transition into their next phase, which is hopefully a good paying job as quickly as possible, sometimes with a paid apprenticeship. And we are working to grow our numbers of paid apprenticeships also, so that students can put into practice while they're learning the concepts that they are learning for an employer and be paid while going to school. That's a very successful model that works well for our students. And then finally, I would say we have a number of free college programs. The most well-known is our Star Scholar program in Chicago that was started by a previous mayor, where any student graduating from Chicago Public Schools with a grade point average of 3.0 or above can come to city colleges, earn an associate's degree for free. Free books, free materials, free tuition for up to 3 years while they earn their associate's degree. And then we have partnerships with a number of our transfer partners like Roosevelt University, where some Star Scholarship support is maintained to help defray costs as they complete their bachelor degree. We have a Future Ready program at city colleges where we are offering short-term programs that lead directly to career outcomes free of charge to Chicago residents who are new to city colleges. And so we have a number of opportunities for students to come to city colleges and benefit from either affordable tuition or, in some cases, free college as they are pursuing their goals.
Excellent. Thank you. Another area we want to sort of unpack, if you will, and you mentioned it, Dr. Buccola, was one of the, I think you called it a superpower of Roosevelt, is helping to build a sense of community. And as you know, that's one of the critical strategies that many IHEs employ to address student retention, student persistence, is to try to build that supportive network, whether it's through, peer mentoring, first-year experiences, student-faculty connections, building learning communities, and so on, to try to create that sense of belonging and support, and also trying to promote engagement. You talked a little bit about this, and belonging, extracurricular activities, cultural events, and so on, helping to build those kinds of inclusive spaces. If you could expound on some of the initiatives that your institutions have employed, and some of the successes that you've achieved along the way. And also, if you could give a little bit more insight, too, in how you measure, how you gauge success relative to that.
Absolutely. So some of it is sheer numbers, who shows up. So we have noticed, as I have indicated, that in many cases, attendance is not as strong as it once was at things that we have done consistently since before the pandemic until now. But so I want to go back to a couple of things that Provost Potter was talking about, actually, in terms of hybridity and the different ways that can look. So as you were talking about that, one of the things that I was thinking about is, so I was talking before about how we need to kind of strike a balance about using AI as a tool and looking at the way it will be used in a professional space, and not just seeing it, as some faculty still do, as a way to cheat. We need to broaden our horizons and the way we think about that. And so we've also as the city colleges have done, we have retained some of our courses that meet synchronously on Zoom. And we've done that in instances where strategically that helps the students. It helps them to persist and to succeed. So one example that comes to mind for that is education is in my college and in my purview as a set of disciplines. And so for most of those degree tracks, students need to do a sequence of field experience courses. And those happen on site. There are 9 to 12 credit hours of actual student teaching experience at a partner school, usually in the Chicago public school system. And that goes along with registration in a seminar that supports their field experience work with other people in their cohort who are also doing field experience teaching that is taught by one of our faculty members. So we learned pretty quickly that taking a hybrid approach to that, so the field experience teaching happens in person, and their faculty member goes and observes them multiple times per semester at the site where they are doing their student teaching. But we've pivoted to a model of making the course at Roosevelt that supports that work, the seminar that they attend once a week, a Zoom experience. So it's easier for all the students to join it after their very busy workday of being a student teacher. They don't have to get to our campus and be at our campus until, 8 p.m. at night in a seminar, and then go home to wherever that is and get up at 5:30 the next morning to go and teach again all day. And that's been great. That's been a really effective strategy for making that better for the students in terms of their workload, but it clearly still develops the kind of community, that you're asking about. So students now use technology, right? So they create text chats and, stuff with their peers, in addition to the fact that they have, a learning management system that supports the course where they can message one another and so forth. And we've seen a great deal of success with that, and improved performance in some cases on the part of our students, because we're not exhausting them running back and forth, between their practicum site and our campus. So one example that I'd also like to give of this idea of building and maintaining community, we have in our philosophy program a seminar that happens usually twice a semester called the Montesquieu Forum, and it's always a 4:30 p.m. lecture, and that has survived the pandemic extremely well. So the instructor who teaches it is a very high-touch instructor. He, has loads of office hours, works with his students very intently, gives out his cell phone number on his syllabus, that kind of thing. But alumni come back, to attend that seminar. And because it is externally funded, he also takes everyone who wants to go, who has attended the seminar, down to Chinatown after the seminar is over at 6 p.m. for dinner, to continue conversation with whoever the guest speaker was. And so we've been trying to work with our Student Advisory Council for the college to sort of scaffold off of the success of that event, which is always packed with people. So among the ways that we have done that, this year it just so happened that 2 of the guest speakers who came were presenting a talk that connected to a film in some way. So we worked with our Student Advisory Council to arrange an on-campus screening of the film that the lecture would be about a week before the lecture took place. And, the students worked to advertise that. And then that was beneficial. We got people to come out to that. Another extremely popular event that we collaborate with our Student Advisory Council to do we do it every spring semester. It's called the Lifeboat Debate. And so it's literally a sort of cage match with a group of professors. So the students get to nominate people that they would like to see in the lifeboat, participating in this debate. and they have to compete for a spot in the lifeboat. And they have to defend why their discipline should be represented in the lifeboat and the future society that they're going to build, on the island where they hope that their lifeboat will navigate to. And so it's always, I see some people laughing out there, it's always highly humorous. It's very funny, the kinds of arguments that people make why they should be kept on or other people should be thrown off or whatever. And that is also a hugely popular event, because I think in part the professors do a really good job of promoting it. So this year that included on social media. People were sort of like throwing shade on their fellow competitors on Instagram and all this kind of stuff before the event took place, and tagging the event and tagging our college and our student organization in it. And so that's an extremely successful event. But the common thread here, I think you will see, is that we are doing these kinds of things that are most effective in collaboration with the students. So we also have monthly Student Government Association town hall meetings, and everyone is invited. They're university-wide town halls. Anyone can go to them. So when they first started doing these a few years ago, some of us who were in administrative and faculty roles who were attending them because we wanted to support the students, we weren't exactly sure what our role there should be. So we weren't sure if it was totally a student space or if we could or should weigh in. And so there's a faculty advisor for the Student Government Association, and she is in my college. She's a political scientist. And so I worked with her over the break between the fall and the spring semesters a couple of years ago to sort of establish some ground rules, because it had kind of started to become, it was a place of community and lots of students came there, but it was starting to take on a very negative kind of tone, like lots of complaining and some things that I found troubling, like name checking faculty members and so forth. And it was very one-sided. That person was not necessarily there to defend themselves or speak to the concerns that were raised. So we established some ground rules for that. So it includes, when people have an issue or a complaint, we ask them a sequence of questions that starts with, have you tried to address this problem, with someone? Like, are you just here to complain about it, or have you actually tried to do something about it? If so, who did you take this concern to already? How can we revisit this in a new way and hopefully get a resolution? And then if not, and if they just genuinely don't know who they should bring the concern to, we make suggestions about who it should be taken to, and or just take it over completely and say, well, we will take this, to the proper person and see that it gets addressed. And it's been extremely helpful for morale of everyone involved and for just basic troubleshooting, because, often the students identify matters that really we should be having eyes on or addressing in some way, and we just don't know that they're happening unless and until someone tells us.
I want to talk about 3 strategies that we're deploying at city colleges in order to build community and strengthen a sense of community and connectedness among students. The first site where we are focusing in on is the classroom, and whether that's a virtual classroom in an online course or a in-person face-to-face classroom. And we are working across the district on initiatives to support faculty in their efforts and in small things that they can do in order to create a stronger sense of belonging and connectedness among students to the subject matter that the students are studying, but also their peers in the classroom, and a stronger sense of connectedness to the instructor, him or herself. And those small things are around creating a welcoming environment. Using a student's name early and often. Things like that there's strong evidence around that shows that they do build that connectedness and sense of belonging and lead to improved outcomes for the students and for the course. So at that classroom level, we're definitely focusing in on the importance of community, connectedness, belonging. Across city colleges, we also have a partnership with a college success nonprofit called 1 Million Degrees, and they are working in collaboration with city colleges, again, to create that sense of connectedness among students, and at pretty significant scale. We have some colleges where any student who is enrolled in more than I believe it's 6 credit hours is eligible. At other colleges, there are other eligibility requirements, but we're operating in partnership with 1 Million Degrees at considerable scale to ensure that students have access to professional coaching. Students who are part of the program get together once a month in morning-long sessions around professional development, and there's ample opportunity there for students to connect with each other. Students benefit from a relationship with a program coordinator who helps them navigate everything at the college and refers them to advisors and tutors, et cetera. So this is again an evidence-based initiative. We have some pretty robust studies that show the positive impact of our partnership with 1 Million Degrees on student success. And part of the magic in this relationship is the community and the connectedness that comes with participation in the program. And then thirdly, I would say that program by program, there are effects that create community and connectedness. Not all of our programs are the same in this respect, but I'm thinking primarily of our cohorted programs where students are coming in as part of a group. They are taking classes with that group. They're sharing experiences with that group. This is common in our healthcare programs, for example, where our instruction is almost entirely in person, where students are interacting with each other and building relationships with each other as they're going through the academic coursework and the professional development to enter into healthcare professions. But I also want to call out, remarkably, our engineering program, specifically at one of our colleges on the northwest side of Chicago, Wright College, where the engineering program there is fully in person, and students are accepted into it. Students of all abilities are accepted into it, and they're accepted into a cohort. And they're going through bridge programs, they're going through coursework, they have peer studying, there are spaces set out. I go there to visit and I see this incredible buzz and excitement among students just to be there, to be studying. And students are driving from all over Chicago to the far northwest side, sometimes from outside of Chicago, to be part of this program. And it has grown considerably to now 650 students pursuing an associate's in engineering sciences so that they can then transfer to one of our partners and get their bachelor's degree in engineering. So it's a hugely successful program built largely upon that sense of community. And we're looking to replicate this program, not just in engineering, at additional sites. And City Colleges did announce last fall the City Colleges School of Engineering that takes this model at Wright College and expands it to other sites within city colleges across the city so that we can serve even more students beyond the 650 that we're serving at Wright College. But we're looking to take the lessons and apply them also to other programs that have the opportunity to be organized in this cohorted fashion.
One of the added benefits of doing our podcast live at today's event is the opportunity for you to ask a couple of questions. We have a little bit of time here for just a couple of questions here for our panelists. So I'll open the floor. Yes, sir.
Yes, I teach at a community college in California. Most of the things that you're talking about, we're doing. It's good to know that we're all on the right track. The one thing that we're doing that I did not hear either one of you address, one of the biggest costs for our students is not tuition, it is textbooks. The big push in California is something called cool4ed.org, cool, C-O-O-L, and it's a list of free open source educational materials. To what extent are your institutions trying to utilize these zero-cost textbooks to help your students weather things? And what is the biggest obstacle? Is it faculty?
So just for our listeners here, the question is relative to how you assist students in overcoming what might be a potential financial obstacle or hurdle at your institutions.
Yes, so specifically the question is about managing the ballooning costs of textbooks. So we also, like our interlocutor here from Community College System in California, have a lot of faculty who use open educational resource materials. So we've mentioned that both Provost Potter and myself are early modernists by training, me in lit and he in history. And so I think that one of the things that I at least came to very early is some of the amazing resources that have become available through digitization. So in fact, I was a little bit chagrined by the alacrity with which research libraries were digitizing their materials, because it meant it was harder to make a case for physically going there. I saw my summer weeks at the British Library receding into the past, when it became less and less necessary to physically go there. So the British Library, the Folger Shakespeare Library in my case, the Newberry Library right here in Chicago, they have all kinds of really robust archival materials that anyone can access for free. And then there are a number of instances in which entities like that go even further, and they actually prepare suggested compendia of online digital resources for faculty teaching in specific areas. And I know my own research space the best, but I know we have lots of faculty who have access to corresponding resources of that kind. We also have in Illinois a really rich resource sharing situation called iShare, which is a consortium of almost all. There's a few non-participants that are, I would say, maybe, not willing to let us play with their toys. But most of the libraries throughout Illinois participate in this, academic libraries. So it's sharing digital resources, it's sharing of physical books, so students can interlibrary loan books, so if an instructor is requiring a given text, that it immediately gets checked out, in all of its copies at their own home institution. They can interlibrary loan it from somewhere else. Articles can be digitized and just emailed to you. So it is much easier for students to access materials in those ways. And then for actual physical books, one of the things that we have done at Roosevelt, our bookstore got taken over a number of years ago by Barnes & Noble. And they actually do something, so our teams at Roosevelt are the Lakers. If you look out the window, you'll see why. It's the Laker book bundle at Roosevelt. And it's a very clever system where students, when they have their course schedule for a given semester, they can go into a portal at the bookstore and it will tell them if the book bundle flat fee is going to be the most economical option for them, or if they have an instructor who is using, or a set of instructors who are providing a lot of free resources in their class and they only need to buy one book, the book bundle price might not be the most economical thing, and it will just tell them, you should actually just buy this book And in some cases, they can get it on Amazon or something, for cheaper than they can get it from the bookstore. So yes, we have tried to combat that in a number of ways. And then we also have students who just rent their textbooks, and that's cheaper. And then they have to return them, though. They don't have them to keep at the end of the semester. And often their instructors will give them advice about that. So if they think that a book is something that they will use in future semesters, they will advise them that it's not wise to rent it or what have you, because it's more economical for them to keep it.
I'm so glad you asked the question, and I feel remiss for not having mentioned this earlier, so thank you. We're taking a very direct approach to this critically important issue because it is a real cost to students. And I sometimes see what it is that students are paying, and it's astounding. But what we have done for the first time now on the schedule of classes that students see in the 2025-2026 academic year is a designation where they can tell before they register for their classes if this is going to be a no-cost textbook course or a low-cost textbook course. We set the threshold for low cost at $50, and then of course no cost means no cost. And we've been monitoring this. I'm happy to see that we have hundreds of class sections now on this summer and then fall of 2025 schedule that are no cost for students, so they can vote with their feet and enroll in those sections, class sections, where they will incur no costs for their textbooks. We're doing a little less well in the low cost category, and this is, we're learning as we're doing here. $50 might be a little too low as a threshold, and it's sometimes difficult to know with the markup at the bookstore whether it's actually going to be under $50 or not. But the no cost has been a real success, and then we're going to support faculty in the creation of OERs with some mini grants so that they can do the work themselves to identify the resources that were mentioned and that are available in many cases in order to be able to import OERs into their classes. And we're gonna look over time and set targets and see these numbers of no cost class sections grow on our schedule. And I'm really excited about this because I think it's going to make a real significant difference to our students. So thank you for the question.
Okay, we have time for one more quick question. Yes. Excellent. So again, the question is, it starts with sort of the foundation of renegotiating a social contract between university and students. And within this context, then, how that is impacting the expectations of faculty, particularly faculty being called to come back to campus for face-to-face instruction.
Well, I am not people's favorite person on this point. So yes, we have space competition that was identified in the UK, a lot of booting of people out of office space because we need it for lab or, classroom space. We've had that happening too, allowing certain offices to go fully remote. And this, of course, creates resentment among the offices that can't be fully remote, that have what one of my colleagues refers to as the deli counter mentality of staffing, of, like you must be here from morning until, closing, whatever that is, So that creates some tensions. But to go back to this topic of hybridity that we've been talking about, I had a perfectly beautiful example to use with people in the last semester that unfolded in my office. So I had a colleague who's an associate dean who still teaches one class per semester. And in the fall, she was teaching an online course, but she had loads of students who were coming to see her in person for office hours. And so I had been really beating the drum with faculty who I were noticing were wanting to schedule themselves into completely an online schedule. Like, oh, but no. Like, just because you're teaching online, you still have on-campus obligations. And they are stated in our faculty handbook that there's an expectation that you are supposed to be on campus to support students, to build community, collegiality, it says it. But even so, I was having difficulty getting some people to do it. So I started citing that example of just because someone is taking an online class, that doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you in person. They might want to. And same thing with the sort of, hybrid sort of Zoom synchronous courses that we're talking about. Just because you have office hours available on Zoom doesn't mean that students only want to meet you in that context or in that space. And, I think that one of the things that we're all really navigating now is all the different ways in which people learn. And so, just because you might be successful in an online or a Zoom course, that doesn't mean that model works for you for the kind of deep dive conversation you want to have in office hours. So getting people back in person, I think, is really important. It's a challenge. I don't necessarily have a magic wand answer to that, but I see ample evidence that it's necessary.
So City Colleges is a unionized environment, and so it's a little different, I think, than at Roosevelt University. I would say that you talk about negotiating the social compact with faculty. I would argue that we are constantly negotiating. We don't talk about the social compact per se, but with the work conditions with our faculty unions. And then additionally, layered onto that is a strong culture of shared governance at city colleges. There's a faculty council at each of the colleges. There's a district-wide faculty council. And I'm the point person for working with faculty council at the district level and for bargaining with our instructional unions in matters that impact instruction. And so I'll tell you, these structures have benefited us over the years, prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, because we're able to have consistent conversation with our faculty stakeholders within commonly understood parameters about matters that are important to them, matters that are important to us, and primarily matters that are important to students. And so we've been able to have conversations, for example, around what percentage of the faculty load should be online, or can be online, or what percentage is permitted. What do virtual office hours look like for faculty, and what are their expectations for on-campus work throughout their academic year, and then in the faculty council space, we've been able to engage in matters of safety and security. And the faculty council has been very proactive in this regard, establishing a subcommittee that I and my counterpart at City Colleges, who is responsible for safety and security, met with over a period of time on a very regular basis in order to make sure to hear from faculty and to take into consideration what they had to share with us, what their concerns were, what their ideas were, and to work collaboratively with that group on matters of safety and security. So these structures really have benefited City Colleges in navigating a lot of that tricky territory that you're referring to.
Okay, so we have just a couple minutes left, so I've asked our guests if they would, just to make some closing comments and recognizing about a minute each, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much. This has been such an enjoyable conversation, and I really look forward to the rest of the day. As I mentioned, Roosevelt is right up the street, so if anybody wants to take a field trip later during a break, I encourage you to walk on down there and visit our historic auditorium building, or our LEED certified tower that you can see out the window there that has a green roof on it and all kinds of cool stuff. Those windows are dorms, which Provost Potter mentioned, so the students who live in our dorms have some of the best views in the city of Chicago, looking south along Lake Michigan. I know we've talked about a number of challenges facing higher ed right now, but I think it's also a really exciting time in higher education. There's a lot of opportunity before us, and I think that today we're going to have a lot of conversations about productive ways to move forward together.
Thank you. This is an exciting time, and I'm very appreciative to have been part of the conversation this morning, so thank you. And thank you to everyone who has listened and engaged. Look, we're doing a lot of good and important work at City Colleges of Chicago. I mentioned earlier that we consider ourselves one of the most important engines of economic mobility in the city, and we're leaning into that mission. And we're focusing in on what we can do academically and what we can do in student supports, in ensuring that students are holistically supported along their journeys. And we're very optimistic at City Colleges. I think that's an important point to leave on here. We are certain that if we keep homing in on the work that we're doing, on the priorities that we have, we are going to be serving the residents of Chicago in critically important ways for years to come. And so I'm optimistic, my colleagues are optimistic, and there are great things to come for not just City Colleges, but I would say the city of Chicago.
Thank you again for attending today's session, being part of our podcast. And if you would, please join me in thanking our panelists and our podcast guests, Dr. Buccola and Dr. Potter. Thank you both.